Have you ever stopped to think about how 9 people interpreting a document that's over 200 years old can have a say in what you can do, what you can say, or even who you can be? Well, that's the incredible power of the Supreme Court. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain and see how their biggest decisions have truly shaped the world you live in. It's a fantastic question, isn't it? I mean, the U.S. Constitution is our national blueprint, but a lot of its most important phrases are actually pretty short and open-ended. So when we disagree on what those phrases mean, who gets the final say? That's exactly where the Supreme Court steps in. Their whole job is to interpret that blueprint, and their decisions basically tell the story of a country that's constantly figuring itself out. But the court wasn't always the powerhouse it is today. Not at all. In the early days, it was kind of seen as the weakest branch of government. It didn't have an army, didn't have a police force. Really, all it had was the power of its own words. But then came one brilliant legal showdown where the court found its voice and claimed its power for good. Okay, picture this. The year is 1803, and there is a major clash brewing between the president and the court. Now, we don't need to get lost in all the political drama of the time, but here's what you need to know. The outcome of this one case, Marbury v. Madison, was going to fundamentally change the balance of power in America forever. And this is it. This is where the court gets its superpower. From the Marbury v. Madison case, we get this huge principle called judicial review. All that means is the Supreme Court has the final authority to say whether a law from Congress or an action by the president violates the Constitution. It's the ultimate check on the other branches, and it's what made the court a truly equal player in the government. So, once the court makes a ruling, that decision doesn't just disappear. It becomes what we call a precedent. Just think of it like a legal building block. From then on, all other courts across the country have to follow that guide. It's what makes sure the law is applied consistently and, predictably. And that is the crucial point. These precedents aren't just little suggestions, they are the guiding lights that light up the path for our entire legal system. But what happens when that light leads us down a path that society later decides is just plain wrong? All right, let's see exactly how this works, with one of the most significant and controversial precedents in all of American history. This is a story about how a single court ruling can end up defining a nation for generations. So in the case of Plessy v. Ferguson, the Supreme Court essentially gave a constitutional green light to segregation. It declared that as long as separate facilities for different races were supposedly equal, then they were perfectly legal. And just like that, this precedent became the legal bedrock for decades of racial discrimination. But here's the thing about precedents. They are not set in stone. They can be challenged. And in some rare, incredibly powerful moments, they can be completely overturned. And that is exactly what happened in a case that would become a defining turning point for civil rights in America. Just take a look at this. On one side, you've got this wall of segregation legally built by that Plessy decision. But 58 years later, in the landmark case Brown v. Board of Education, the court came to a radically different conclusion. They didn't just chip away at that wall. No, they declared that the very idea of separate was inherently unequal, and they brought the entire structure crumbling down. And I mean, just look at this timeline. For 58 years, that's almost 6 decades, separate but equal was the law of the land. The Brown decision didn't just tweak a law. It declared that an entire way of life, one built on segregation, was unconstitutional. And this is why this is all so important. It shows us that our understanding of the Constitution isn't just frozen in time. It's a living, breathing thing, interpreted by a court that sometimes reflects and sometimes leads our society's own changing ideas about justice and equality. So these historical cases are really fascinating, but this is not just some history lesson. Supreme Court rulings have shaped so many of the rights and procedures you probably take for granted every single day, from what happens on the street to what happens in the classroom. Have you ever watched a cop show where they arrest a suspect? Of course you have. Well, you've seen the impact of this case. Before 1966, police procedures could be wildly different from place to place, but the Supreme Court's ruling in Miranda v. Arizona created one single national standard to protect a citizen's rights when they're arrested. And those famous words, the Miranda rights, they're a direct result of that ruling. The court decided that every single person has to be informed of their rights before police questioning can even begin. It's a Supreme Court precedent you probably hear on TV every week. Okay, now let's bring it even closer to home. School. Yep, the court has also had a lot to say about the rights of students. This next case, Tinker versus Des Moines, it started with just a few students protesting the Vietnam War by wearing simple black armbands. The school suspended them for it, and that case went all the way to the top.
And in this powerful conclusion, the court declared that students do not shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. This decision established that students absolutely have free speech rights as long as it doesn't seriously disrupt the school day. It's a ruling that protects student voices to this very day.
So, as we've seen, the story of the Supreme Court is really the story of an evolving nation, a nation that is constantly re-examining what its own founding principles really mean. From establishing its own power way back with Marbury, to setting a really divisive precedent with Plessy, to correcting that course with Brown, and then defining individual rights with Tinker, each one of these cases is a crucial chapter in the ongoing story of American law. And you know what? That story is far from over. The court continues to hear cases that will shape our privacy, our technology, and our society for decades to come. The conversation that started over 200 years ago is still happening, right now. And with each new ruling, a new page is written. The only question is, what will that next page say?